Anyone who studies Cincinnati's history owes a debt of gratitude to Wendell Phillips Dabney. Nearly 100 years ago, Dabney published one of the most important books ever written about the Queen City. Cincinnati's Colored Citizens appeared in 1926 and is still essential reading for anyone who wants to understand the rich history of our city. At a time when black people faced unrelenting persecution and segregation, Dabney compiled an exhaustive and almost encyclopedic record of African Americans in Cincinnati. His book highlights the accomplishments and points of pride of a thriving community, derided and stereotyped by the majority power structure. On page after page, Dabney documented hundreds of black citizens raising respectable families, owning solid and profitable businesses, and residing in homes better than those occupied by many of Cincinnati's white residents. He demonstrated that black professionals thrived in Cincinnati despite legal and societal prejudice, and he showcased charitable institutions created, constructed, and funded by black generosity, including an orphanage, social clubs, churches, schools, and homes for the elderly. Almost a century later, Dabney's book is the only available source for information about black Cincinnatians before the Civil Rights era. Wendell Dabney was born in Richmond, Virginia, just after the South surrendered in defeat to end the Civil War. His parents had been slaves, but built a successful catering business after achieving freedom. Dabney graduated high school in Richmond and began appearing on stage, sometimes with tap dance legend Bill Bojangles Robinson, a childhood companion. Dabney later attended Oberlin College in Ohio and performed in that school's orchestra. After teaching for a couple of years in Virginia, Dabney relocated to Cincinnati, where he excelled at several endeavors. He was an accomplished musician who composed and published songs and melodies and offered lessons through Cincinnati's Wurlitzer Emporium. He was a leader in the local Republican Party, and for 2 decades he served as paymaster for the city of Cincinnati, entrusted with dispersing a total of $80 million over the course of his career. Dabney was the longtime editor of The Union, Cincinnati's first newspaper aimed at an African American audience, and he was the first president of the Cincinnati chapter of the NAACP. When Wendell P. Dabney died in 1952 at the age of 86, Cincinnati mourned.
Okay, so Greg Hand, the man behind Cincinnati Curiosities, joins us now to dive a little deeper into this. Greg, so what brought Wendell Dabney to Cincinnati?
Oh, this is amazing. His mother inherited, through some family connection, the Dumas Hotel, which was the only hotel in Cincinnati for almost a century that accepted African American patrons. And so Dabney came here to run that hotel, located on the east end of downtown, and that's where his offices were for ages and ages.
Wow, so how did he ultimately then land that job as paymaster for Cincinnati?
This is the Boss Cox era. This is when Boss Cox ran the city of Cincinnati. And the way he ran the city was getting out votes. He knew that Dabney was extremely influential in the black community. And so he got a plum job for him so that Dabney in his newspaper would generate publicity in favor of the Boss Cox candidate. So it's a political patronage job, but one of the ways that that black citizens could advance at that time.
Wow. All right. So, I mean, all of this has been fascinating. How can somebody get a copy of Dabney's book?
Thankfully, publishers are starting to reissue the book. Up until a couple of years ago, if you wanted a copy of Dabney's book, you had to find a bookseller that would part with it for about $150. It's an extremely sought-after book. You can now do a little searching and find paperback copies for about 25 bucks, and it's well worth it. A wonderful book about Cincinnati history.
Yeah, I love it, Greg. Always fun catching up with these Cincinnati Curiosities. Thanks for taking the time to come in and talk with us.
It's a pleasure.